What's up, everybody? Cole Sands Fishing here. So today I'm going to give y'all a little breakdown of my favorite baits to use in the spring. And what I mean by spring is late March to early May. You know, this is a special time of year. The trees are blooming, the birds are singing, the water temperatures are rising. The fish got one thing on their mind, and that's to move up and spawn. And man, there's a lot of ways to catch them right now. This is one of my favorite times of year to junk fish. You know, it's a time of year you can catch them on 20 different baits, but you know, I'm going to narrow it down to about as condensed as I can get it for the month of, April mainly, but, that March through May spawn period, when fish are around the spawn or fish are getting ready to spawn / a little bit post spawn. So these are the baits that I have on my deck. I'm going to really thoroughly go through each one of them and tell you the setups I use as well. So let's get into it. And if y'all have any questions, be sure to leave them down in the comment section. I might be able to do a little recap video to this and, answer a couple of those for y'all. So let's start off with the finesse stuff. And that's the main thing I use. And this video is going to be specifically targeted towards Lake Chickamauga and kind of the Tennessee River, area. If it was a different part of the country, I might throw in a couple different baits. But and what I show you is going to work pretty much all around the country this time of year. But this is specifically targeted towards Lake Chickamauga. So let's start with the finesse stuff. So I'm a big finesse fisherman this time of year. It puts fish in the boat. It catches numbers, which is huge. You get your limit in the boat. But if you throw it all day, usually by the end of the day, you're going to have, on a tough day, you're still having like 14, 15 pounds. If you just fish slow, take your time with these first few baits I'm going to show you. So first off, we got to talk about probably one I throw more than anything this time of year, and that's a lightweight shaky head. Absolutely love it this time of year. It's one of my favorite baits to throw, and kind of one of my secrets. Everybody throws a shaky head, but I go really light to go with either an 1/8 ounce, or I've even gone down to a 1/16 before. So just throwing a little 1/8 ounce shaky head. That's a green pumpkin Texas red worm from Fishco. I usually throw the smallest worm, the 4-inch finesse worm, and with that I'm targeting stumpy places. When the fish are getting ready to spawn, I'm going to fish stumpy places close to deeper water, even some transition banks, but usually I'm going back in the creeks and doing it. Some transition bluffy banks. And as far as that setup, Witch Doctor tackle rod, 7.2 medium action. That's what I use almost for every one of my finesse setups, is that 7.2 medium. I think it's the Shaman series, super sensitive rod. I love the Vanford reel from Shimano. I'm not sponsored by them, but that's just one of my favorites. But 10-pound Yozuri T7 fluorocarbon as the leader, then 10-pound Yozuri braid, it's the super braid for the main line. I use yellow just because, sometimes you don't feel the bite this time of year, especially using really light tackle, but you'll see your line moving. So I like a high vis, like that yellow there. But that's one of my biggest killers this time of year. I fish lightweight and I fish slower than almost anybody else around me once I know there's fish in an area, especially. If it's a real stumpy row leading back to a spawning pocket or in a spawning pocket, I know there's fish there, and I just got to fish a little bit more finessey than anybody else, and I'm probably going to catch them. Same thing, same setup, pretty much doing the same thing, but sometimes when the fish get a little bit more fickle, they don't want that 4-inch bait. I'll go down to the little Ned rig. Same way with it. I'm going really lightweight. I think it's a 1/10 ounce Ned rig head. And that is the Little Deuce from Fishco. That's green pumpkin, purple copper, I believe. Just a super natural color, man. I've killed smallmouth on that bait, spotted bass, and of course some big largemouth. Usually I will dip the tail a little bit chartreuse, just something that I think irritates them a little bit this time of year. I'm a big believer in, fish dyes, and especially scent, putting scent on your plastics this time of year when they're around the spawn, around bed fishing. That's also a really killer little bed bait. If there's one in bed, you can throw that in there. It's just such an easy meal for them to get in their mouth and swim off with. Very, very good bait. Same rod setup, same line as well. So that's two of my favorites. And all this I throw on spinning gear. This is lightweight tackle. You don't want to throw it on a bait caster. You can if you want. I feel like I can work the bait better, and I actually feel like I land the fish a little bit easier on the spinning gear with this light setup, just because these rods are so parabolic. They really allow you to fight the fish and get them in the boat. And the biggest thing when using this finesse gear too is just making sure the fish get tired out. Don't rush them. Take your time. Let the fish run around a little bit, and then as soon as they quit fighting, go down there and grab them. Same rod setup here. This is actually a medium light for my drop shot. I'll use a medium some too, just depending on the cover I'm fishing. Same 10-pound braid, 10-pound Yozuri T7 leader. But when it comes to the drop shot this time of year, of course I use it around the shallow stuff like the stumps and stuff. It's just a little bit different presentation that puts the bait, right in their face. But what I really like to do with this, and kind of one of my really best kept secrets, is I take this drop shot. I'm using either a 4 or a 6-inch Fishco worm. This is the peanut butter and jelly color. That's their little Finesse worm. And what I do with this is I find stumps on live scope, usually 3 to 8 foot of water, even some brush piles. And I'll just flip this around, making short flips with live scope. And I'll pick off individual fish that a lot of people miss. And definitely a killer little way to catch them this time of year around the spawn. Other finesse baits, there goes all my rods. But other finesse baits I like to throw. You can't talk about the spawn without talking about this one. And that's the Fishco Money Stick, stick style bait. As far as that goes, as far as color goes, green pumpkins are really good on Chickamauga. Just anything with a little bit of green pumpkin in it, some natural. This is a green pumpkin June bug laminate. So, if you get a little stain water in there too, just something that looks super real, looks like a bluegill a lot. Wacky rig it, I'll Nico rig it, I'll Texas rig it, I've Carolina rigged it. But, around the spawn, usually I'm wacky rigging it or Texas rigging it with a really lightweight, like a 16th ounce. And if I'm Texas rigging it, I usually go on a bait caster, like a 7.2 medium heavy, like a Voodoo 2 from Witch Doctor Tackle. Usually like 16 pound Yozuri T7 fluorocarbon. If I throw it on a wacky rig, I'm throwing that same, 10 pound braid to a 10 pound fluorocarbon setup. And I'm just throwing it in I think it's a number 1 Nico rig hook is my favorite to go to. I usually do use a split ring, or an O-ring, I should say. It, I feel like you can get a lot more use out of your bait. But so those 4 finesse style baits are like ones those are my bread and butter a lot of times, especially on Chickamauga. These fish get pressure a lot, so you got to go real finesse, real lightweight, and fish really slow. But as you're fishing around the lake, get into some heavy cover, some wood. This is bait number 5, I believe. You got to have a flipping style bait on. Whether it's a creature bait, I will flip like a Texas rig a lot. I personally like a jig, and more specifically a compact jig around the spawn. Same kind of theory, something they get in their mouth really easily, and it's just an easier meal to eat. It's kind of like that Ned rig. I love flipping a big jig, especially pre-spawn. Right before they spawn, as they're trying to fatten up, and right after they spawn, I love flipping a big jig. But around the spawn, a lot of times I'll go a little bit more compact. I'm not saying you can't catch them on that big jig, because you sure can. But that's the Savage Chunk from Fishco. That's the packaging it comes in. I just like that little, kind of a chunk style, but it looks very realistic too. It's got little eyes on it, and it fits that little compact jig perfectly. It's just a little bit longer than the skirt. And usually when it comes to flipping jig size, when I'm flipping a jig, I want to get through that cover pretty quick. I usually use a 1/2 ounce. I will use a 3/8 at times when I'm fishing really shallow. A swim jig can be good too, especially as the water starts to come up and get some of those yellow flowers that we have here. You can swim that jig through it. You can throw a buzz bait through it some. But when I'm throwing a jig on Chickamauga during around the spawn, I'm usually fishing transition banks, or I'm fishing laydowns where I think there might be some fish spawning around it, where I don't want to throw my finesse stuff in. I think the finesse stuff's going to be a little bit too lightweight. I'm going to flip that jig in there, take my time fishing it. Like I said, you can also use a crawl style bait, like a lizard or a brush hog, or little crawl or something like that can also be great. And if I do go with the Texas rig around brush, I usually still go with a lightweight, like a 1/4 ounce or a 3/16. But definitely cannot talk about the spawn without talking about a flipping style bait. But then as we kind of transition to moving baits that I like to throw, we got to talk about some swim baits. One that I use to cover a lot of water with this time of year is a line through or a harness style swim bait. This is a 3/16 7-inch swim bait. This is one that stays way up in the water column. I like it for skipping around boat docks, skipping down banks. A lot of times fish will come up and look at it if nothing else, so I know where they're at. But that and like a 6-inch mag draft, both of them are very, very good this time of year. Like I said, you can cover water with it. You can throw it around just about any type of structure. And when it comes to that setup, 20 pound Yozuri T7 fluorocarbon, 7.6 heavy action Shaman series Witch Doctor tackle rod. And just take your time with this. This is a slow moving bait. You can really keep in that strike zone, and then fish, if they're on bed and you make a long cast at them, they might just come up and smoke that. And that's a good way to catch some really big ones this time of year. A lot of times, I'll put my limit in the boat with with a finesse style bait, and I'll pick up that big swim bait, or even like a 6-inch mag draft, which really isn't that big of a bait, and I'll just cover a lot of water with it, and catch a couple kickers throughout the day. And then another one that really seems to excel in April or around the spawn is that glide bait. That's a Yozuri Twitch and Ninja. They don't make it anymore, I don't think, but that's one of my favorites. That color right there too, that kind of chromy color, especially them sunny and windy days. With that glide bait, man, I'm throwing it on fish staging on docks, fish staging on points. My favorite conditions are a little bit of sun and some wind. If I can get those two things going, I feel like I can really catch them. But throwing it out there, just fishing it anywhere, I think there might be a big one sitting. Same way with that line through and harness style bait. The fish will come up and hit it, but anywhere you think there might be just one giant, that's where I really like to throw that glide bait and also that line through. And I'm a big swim bait fisherman, man. I love throwing it. It's a ton of fun. But this is the time of year it really does excel. What else to talk about? Yeah, we got to talk about a chatterbait this time of year. That's one thing. Not all fish move up to spawn at one time. And this is also the same time of year. There's usually a little bit of a shad spawn going on, especially if that water gets in the, mid to high 60s. So the chatterbait's a bait that works great in this pre-spawn, post-spawn. It works great really all year. But if you get on that shad spawn going, I target little patches of hydrilla. So, first thing in the morning, if I know where a little bit of hydrilla is, a chatterbait can be a really killer bait. I always go pretty natural on this, like this time of year. It seems like, pre-spawn I'll go with more of the bluegill and the fire crawls and the hot crawl patterns. But as it warms up, I think they start feeding more on shad this time of year. If they're not spawning, I think they're eating shad more than they are crawfish. There is a lot of shad in the back of creeks right now. So just kind of a shad colored chatterbait can be really good. I'm a 1/2 ounce guy. Some people like a 3/8 ounce. I always use a 1/2 ounce. Sometimes I'll up my line a little bit to keep it higher, but I really do like a 1/2 ounce. And then we'll talk about 3 more baits. Here's something I caught them on really good this week, actually. And the water was a little bit muddy. You get them spring rains, and that was a diamond bait spinner bait. I was throwing the 3/8 ounce size. And, a spinner bait is another great one of the baits to cover water, especially when the water's dirty. If the water's real clean, I might throw more of a swim bait style bait. But as that water gets muddy like it was on Monday when I went out, that right there, and I love that little red blade, that gold blade combo. I think it's really irritating to him right now. Chartreuse and white's hard to beat. That one's got a little red on it. Looks maybe like a little bit of a red belly sunfish as well. But caught some really nice fish on that and just covered a lot of water with it. And usually with that, it's like a 7.2 medium heavy is my favorite rod. And then with the chatterbait, 7.2 medium heavy Witch Doctor Tackle Sermon Series rod is my favorite. The Sermon Series is a half glass, half graphite that really allows those moving baits to, when a fish bites it, it really allows them to load up. And man, it's just a super strong rod. And you get that tip of that glass, which really helps when it comes to landing the fish. So that's definitely 2 baits. And a spinnerbait too. I'll throw it in this color when the water's muddy, but as the water cleans up, I'll go to more of the translucent colors. I also love burning a spinnerbait this time of year. Diamond Baits makes some really good multi-bladed spinnerbaits, 3 and 4 bladed spinnerbaits that work great around the shad spawn, and some translucent shaddy colors that you can really burn around some areas, and super killer bait during the shad spawn. And it's kind of like a chatterbait. I'll also throw that spinnerbait in some hydrilla patches as well. But let's talk about 2 more. Next off, you get some of them nasty days this time of year. The chatterbait and spinnerbait can also be good, but a square bill. I love banging a square bill off stumps right now. I will throw a rattling vibe right now some, and I'll talk about that in a second, but a square bill really seems to shine. I'm big on the shad patterns. That's I think that's the white back or the pearl black splatter. I'll throw like a sexy shad color. This is another really good one from Yozuri, is the Ghost Pearl Shad. And this is the 1.5 crank square bill from Yozuri. That's my go-to. They have great finishes on them, and they're very durable. I mean, you can throw that thing and catch 300 fish on it, and it's going to look about like that. Most of their paint jobs are internal, so the paint doesn't really fade. And when I'm throwing that square bill, I'm actually working it pretty fast. The water's pretty warm. I'm covering water, and I'm really burning it, trying to bang off them stumps, create a reaction bite. And when I'm throwing that, same thing. I'm throwing it like on a 610 medium or medium heavy action Sermon Series rod. That's the half glass, half graphite. And on that same setup, I want to talk about my last bait. and that is the hardcore popper, or the Ozuri makes a great popper as well, but the hardcore popper, definitely one of my favorites. Bone, or my second favorite color is, I think it's the Ghost Pearl Shad. Yeah, Ghost Pearl Shad. That's more of a translucent color. But a popper this time of year, man, can make for some of the most explosive blow-ups, around shallow cover, shallow laydowns. A lot of times when the fish are really, really shallow, like in inches, if you throw in there with a sinking bait, it might spook them. But a popper or something like that, makes them feed up. And this thing, it walks so great, casts unbelievable. And I like to just kind of pop it, or walk it a little bit and just let it sit. Let them ripples really die out, and you'll have some awesome bites. And sometimes too, some of the bites will just come up and suck that little feather down. It's got a little feather on the back treble hook. But you're getting topwater bites, and it's that time of year you can finally break out the topwaters. I have caught them on the pencil style baits this time of year, especially around the shad spawn. But that popper, if I'm fishing the bank, I'm going to have that tied on around the spawn. But as far as the line goes for that, usually like 15-pound mono. I like mono more than braid this time of year, especially because I feel like the fish really get a good look at it, fishing it as slow as I will a lot of times. And another thing that happens on Chickamauga, that bank grass starts to grow and them yellow flowers start to get in the water. You can take that popper and really have some really good days throwing it around that type of cover. But one last thing we'll talk about as well, because this does play a little bit in as we go into the spawn as well, but you got to talk about it spring fishing. The Rattling Vibe bite has been awesome the past couple months, but it's starting to go away. But with that being said, I'll still catch them beginning of April on this thing. Usually as the spawn really gets underway, I kind of put it down, but there's still fish, like I said, there's fish in all stages. As these fish are moving up, a lot of times they'll make one last big feed. So in the back of creeks, they'll push back there and they'll feed on shad one last time. And I actually caught them pretty good on this. But the difference is between now and the pre-spawn, I'm going with a little bit smaller bait. That's the 3/8 ounce Ozuri Rattling Vibe. A lot of the bait in the back of pockets right now is pretty shallow. And those are fish that are still usually pre-spawn, just feeding up on the shad back there shallow. And same thing, you just cover a lot of water with it. Sometimes I burn and stop it this time of year. Lately, I've been doing pretty good yo-yoing it, and actually not even ripping it up that hard, just kind of giving it little twitches. And like I said, shad colors. Shad colors are way better right now, in my opinion, than the crawl colors are. I'll show you a couple of my favorite colors. But with that setup, 610 medium heavy, Sermon Series rod, 14-pound Ozuri T7 fluorocarbon. I like 14 a lot. Same way with that square bill. Usually I throw 14. It's super strong. You don't have to worry about breaking it. But I'll show you a couple more colors that I really like to throw. Can't beat, like the sexy shad color. It can be really good. The royal purple can be decent this time of year. Gizzard shad. It's a real natural color. And then one of my favorites is the ghost bluegill. There's a lot of bluegill fry and small bluegill up right now looking for, fish to eat off, or, bass eggs to eat off beds. So that little translucent ghost baby bluegill color right there can get you some really nice fish and a lot of bites. But that's pretty much it. So like I said, it's April, there's fish around the spawn. I love sight fishing as well. When it comes to sight fishing, there's a million ways to catch them. I typically, stick to soft plastics like the Finesse stuff. But that's pretty much it for this time of year. I know it's probably like 12 or 13 baits, but it's the time of year you can have a lot of fun, really fish to your strengths, fish a lot of different ways. But biggest thing I can tell you, fish the conditions this time of year. If it's a nasty day, don't be afraid to throw some of those spinner baits, some of those chatter baits, and especially first thing in the morning if you're looking for a shad spawn. But as the day gets up, fish slow, man. Pick up that Ned rig, that little deuce from Fishco, that little 4-inch finesse worm from Fishco as well. Put it on a shaky head or a drop shot. It'll put you a lot of fish in the boat this year. And hopefully this helped y'all out a little bit. And good luck on the water, everybody.